Test, hello? Test, hello. Okay, it works. Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming. I'm gonna do a very short intro and before I give the stage to Mike. So Mike and I have met like a while ago at Founder Fuel. We were like grinding and building both of our startups. Back then, Mike has built a very nice startup called Appifier, where they had figured out a way to streamline app creation. And then, since then, he's moved to a bunch of other challenges, and that led him to build up Smoosh. And without giving the scoop on Smoosh, my tweet sort of introduction is that first it was website, then there was apps, and I think what's next is bots. And Mike is gonna talk to us about conversational commerce and what they're building at Smoosh. So we're very looking forward to that.
Thanks, Richard. All right, so good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm giving this talk tomorrow at e-commerce Montreal with Ambroise, and you're my test audience for it. So if there's anything that's no good, boo me or scream at me or walk out of the room and I'll take out the slide. So what's the main thing I want you to leave with today? Well, the big takeaway is that software and e-commerce are changing. We're going towards a conversational interface because that's where consumers are spending their time online. And because of this, I think this year in particular, and for the next few years, there are several disruptive opportunities that are existing in the marketplace. So Richard mentioned bots, but there's a whole other slew of them across the landscape that are just waiting for companies, established e-commerce or new entrants and startups to start exploiting them and rethinking them. And if you think about a lot of this conversational movement and the aspect of doing commerce over relationships, it's really not a new idea. So if we look at when retail first started, for our ancestors, turn of the century, even before, their experience of transacting and buying products was something like this, where they would travel away from their home, sometimes a great distance, and they would meet somebody who knew them, who probably watched them grow up, who could anticipate their needs, who could provide a really high-level caliber of personalized service. What you lacked for in convenience, you got in terms of personalization. Then as soon as postal systems started to develop, we had the catalog. So this is an early Eaton's catalog, and it introduced generations of people to convenient shopping and transactions. So you're able to browse the catalog, and then 6 to 8 weeks later, you got a package with your address or whatever else. This spurred advertising, created a whole industry around this, mail order products and transacting. And we did this for many, many years, and we got more and more efficient at doing it, up until the culmination in the 90s of the introduction of e-commerce that we all know well. Now in e-commerce, we spend so much time investing and optimizing this. If we think of everything from SEO to inbound marketing, to how we design our shopping carts, to all the solutions that we've built to A/B test and to email market and drip marketing, there's e-commerce as a concept, even though it's fundamentally just a digital catalog experience through a computer, spurned this whole industry of really interesting things to make the selling process more convenient to the end user and more efficient. But it's still just a catalog process. Even as the world went mobile and we shifted the catalog and took it away from the desktop and into everybody's pocket, we still fundamentally have just that, a very, very convenient delivery mechanism, but one that isn't personalized, one that doesn't really know much about you, one that's designed for general mass consumption and not individualized use. So for the past 100 years, what we've actually had is we've degraded the service quality that our ancestors experienced at the general store. And now, thanks to some developments that we have in the marketplace, in the social marketplace, there's an opportunity where we're able to get back to that strong relationship building. And the reason why I stress that it's happening now is because late last year, there was a dramatic turn in the market. So I think it's the second and third quarter of 2015, the number of monthly active users that were present on messaging apps eclipsed the amount of people that were on social apps and social websites. So you think about that for a minute, it means that people are privately communicating within groups or one-on-one more often and much more regularly than they're liking, tweeting, sharing, retweeting, whatever it is, right? And if you think of your relationships on messenger apps today, I would bet that the vast majority of you have only really messaged one another or your family members. They tend to be much more intimate conversations. So there's a huge untapped piece here waiting for exploitation, where businesses, at least in the West, haven't figured out yet how to cross into these conversations and how to build this personal relationship with the user. Meanwhile, all these users are here, ready and waiting for the taking. And when we think about this, and the fact that so many users are spending their time communicating through a simple text message-based approach, and we extend it to all technology and all software, it makes us think that the interface of the future is not going to be what we saw in Star Trek that looks like this. It won't be a highly engineered UI. It's going to look a lot more like this, right? And the reason why it's going to look like a simple text input field is because, well, this is something that's supported everywhere. Every feature phone in the developing world to the developed world and every smartphone has the ability to send and receive basic text messages. All the modern social messengers like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and WeChat, they all do it too. That's natively what they do. And that's just on the consumer side. In the enterprise side, you've seen the emergence of Slack and these enterprise messaging tools and what they mean, and how increasingly software and services that we access within a company are also done through this messaging kind of command line or through this concept of a conversation. And what's next on the horizon is even voice. Because once a computer transcribes voice, it becomes a string of text that gets input into a text field like anything else. The big thing here that's happening is suddenly designers have to rethink how they're building systems. Instead of designing UIs like that Star Trek one, where they're thinking about the user, how they make the user learn the technology in the best way, now the designers have to think about how do I design technology so that it understands my user's intent in the best way, since the only way the user interacts is through that one text input stream. That's a really big paradigm shift for how a designer's thinking. So at Smooch, we spend a lot of time thinking about the concept of messaging and trying to understand the barriers that businesses, small and large, will face when they're starting to interact with this new medium. So we surveyed about 1,000 consumers last month, and we got some interesting results. The first is we looked at what industries they would most likely message if they had the opportunity. And the ones that came out on top, you can see them here, tend to be industries where there's already a high-touch service component to them. Things like restaurants, things like travel, transportation. Think of all these cases where, yes, there's like a happy path where you book a table at a restaurant and you show up and you have your meal, but there's probably all sorts of other special requests you have or exceptions, you're going to be late, and all sorts of reasons to communicate. And this is happening across many different industries. And when we look at why they want to talk to them, it's interesting. So there's some that are kind of obvious and not really that surprising. So customer support. But then there's others like scheduling and confirming appointments or getting information on products and service. Really like things that we're using telephones for today. A lot of people, and this is across age groups, are starting to think, well, why can't I have this conversation over messaging, over a text message? And because it's so pervasive in their lives, we found that customers are equally likely to want to message a small business as they are to message a large corporation. I mean, when you think of it, it'd be weird now if you met somebody and they gave you their phone number and you couldn't text them. So why do we find it normal that we see a business, we meet a business, we get a business card, and we can't text them and we can't text the phone number that they give us, right? So it really makes it clear that consumers are really thinking about being able to text and message anyone. But perhaps the most exciting thing for all of us in e-commerce is that when we surveyed, half of the respondents, without really understanding what it meant and what the flow was, said they would be comfortable making a purchase as the result or directly within the text messaging conversation. This is huge. And we've built features into our own product to facilitate this and to facilitate one-click buys in the conversation stream, and you're going to see it pop up all sorts of places over the next year. And what's also really interesting is that almost 70% of respondents said that brands that they liked and engaged with often, they would add to their contact list in their mobile phone. This is even deeper than adding a mobile app and downloading like the Frank and Oak or the Harry's mobile app. This means that you're actually putting a brand on speed dial, right? And we know how precious that is. I just think for some businesses that matters. So we're really excited about all this. There's this shift in the market. There's a shift in consumer behavior that is ripe to be taken advantage of, and that's why we started Smooch. This is a photo from a few months ago. We're 25 people now. We're based in San Francisco and in Montreal. I split my time between both. Last November, we haven't announced it publicly yet, but we will be in the next couple of weeks. We raised $7.5 million in the seed round. And to date, our traction is pretty impressive. So over a year, we've gone from basically no businesses using us to over 6,000 and 15 million monthly active users that are conversing with businesses. And this is all over the world, across 50 countries, a variety of channels. But what is it that we do at Smooch? Well, we're really building infrastructure for all of these companies and all of these commercial transactions to happen over messaging. So we make it possible for a business that wants to interact with its customers through any channel: email, SMS, web chat, in-app chat, traditional social, and what we call OTT messengers, which is the wave of messenger apps. So like Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Kik, Telegram, and a bunch of others that are out there. We're able to take all of these channels and allow a business to use them with whatever system that they already have in place. So if they're using Salesforce Service Cloud, they can connect Service Cloud there and handle those customer inquiries and those messaging conversations without changing a single thing in their workflow. They could use Zendesk, they could use Help Scout, they could use a custom CRM. We really are flexible enough to support it all. And then because we're able to provide a bridge to all of these different messaging channels and all of these places where consumers are living and communicating, we can connect other systems like bots, right? So bots, or you can think of them kind of like rudimentary AI and sometimes even sophisticated AI that helps to automate parts of the transaction or parts of the communication that are complex. And then we even tie into business systems. Whoops. I don't know why that went away. But we even tie into business systems, things like Shopify, Stripe for transactions, Marketo for lifecycle marketing. So all of these things that you were doing over email before, we're able to bring across all the messaging channels really, really transparently. This is a pretty interesting position for us to be in, and we're seeing adoption across a wide variety of customer segments as a result. But what are our customers building, and why are they choosing to adopt these conversational technologies? It's more than just the fact that the users are there. There are serious advantages to building your app and building your business on messaging. So the first one is that distribution is way, way easier. If we think of what happened since the introduction of the iPhone, we went through this wave of people, where people were trying to get you to download their app. I know every time I visit Quora or a bunch of other sites on the internet, Travelocity is another one of them, they keep on hounding me to download the app, and there's this big breakage flow in terms of adoption of this mobile leave behind. But now, well, this is one of the first conversational companies, Magic, an app can just be a phone number. So this company, Magic, which was started in San Francisco about a year and a half ago and went through Y Combinator, to date, all they are is a phone number and a single plain HTML web page, not even a CMS on the web. The way you find out about it is by hearing a recommendation from your friend and knowing the awesome customer service stories that they're able to produce. So what happens is you literally text that number anything you want, and someone on the other end, and it's never clear if it's a human or if it's a robot, in reality it's a combination of both, actually helps find the product you need, find the service you need, or take care of any request or wish you have, basically like a genie. And they charge you for it entirely over a plain text message conversation. The other thing that's interesting, I mean, I just mentioned genies, right? And this notion of having, a servant that lives in your phone that you can just text your wish to. And that's that mass personalization is easier than ever. So I've been doing product management for a while now, ever since I had my last startup. And I can't tell you, and I'm sure you guys know, how much time you spend in meetings trying to decide what is that minimal feature set that you need? What are the buttons and where should they go? Are we really customizing this to reach the maximum number of users? Well, with a conversational interface, and this is an example of one of our clients, you can support these conversations going in any direction possible and still being able to funnel them through to your goal. So in this case, this is a company called Treat out of San Francisco, and they're like an Uber for veterinarians and pet care. So the way it works is you download their app. They're not on the other messaging channels yet. And you're first greeted by a bot named TreatBot. TreatBot walks you through and asks you questions about what do you need? Is your dog behaving badly? Is there a symptom that it should look into? And for certain things that it understands well, it's able to schedule an appointment, and you can actually make a purchase by clicking a buy button or book an appointment straight from the app. If it reaches a situation that it doesn't understand, and right now it's not that smart, it actually connects you to a real veterinarian who bills you for their time during this situation. You can imagine how difficult it would be to build an app like this if you had to design menus for every ailment and possible diagnostic cause. In many cases, the much easier solution is just bring it over to a human that can help you. Another one that's really interesting is breaking free from captive workflows. So I was doing my taxes, and every year when I do my taxes, I sit down, literally a bottle of wine, and I go through all the pieces of paper that I have, and I don't get up from the dining room table until I've crossed every box and I've done everything. And the reason why I have this stack of not just stack of T4s, but stack of slips is because every time something comes in the mail, I file it away for that one day that I decide to sit down and actually do my taxes. Well, Intuit went into conversational commerce in a really, really big way. So they launched an app in the US this year called Tada. And what Tada does is it's actually a conversational approach to doing your taxes. Unfortunately, it only works in the US. But the idea behind it is that if you're using Tada, as you get these slips coming in, take a picture of them and text it to your tax expert. The tax expert will interview you on your own terms. Think of when you get a text from a friend, you're not sitting there necessarily texting them back and forth right away. They might text you in the morning, you answer in the afternoon. The tax agent at Tada does exactly this. And it's like 90% automated, but it feels like a human. And at the end, they keep on this like aspect of humanity. They even send you a funny GIF if you've got a good return, and they get you really excited about doing your taxes this way. So think of like these long, complex workflows that before were prohibitive to put users through or a little more complicated, now can actually be brought out in a really exciting way. And yeah, as I was saying to that, bots are there to do the dirty work. So one early objection that we had when we were talking to companies about messaging was, well, now I'll need, instead of having developers, I'll need to have call centers full of people that are handling all these hellos and that are handling all of these questions. But in reality, you can actually use a robot and a conversational flow to take care of a lot of the basics. So in our own product, when you sign up for it, it's a traditional SaaS product, but when you sign up, you meet SmoochBot, and SmoochBot actually goes through and sets up Smooch for your business. So it asks you for your name, it asks you for the role on the team, all of this like basic market segmentation stuff. And then once you give it that information, it actually proceeds to configure the software for you. It's really just a replacement of the web flow, but we're learning so much more when we're doing this because all the inputs are free form, because it feels like, yeah, it does some, beep, boop, beep, and all those fun things. And it actually led to us having about 12% higher conversion from somebody passively signing up on Smooch to actually becoming a customer. So we're pretty excited about that. And we're seeing this done across a variety of different business types, not just SaaS. And what I think is really interesting is that it's even going to change the makeup of companies like this and the labor force, right? Before, I think Johnny Ive is the guy who designed the iPhone, is Apple's chief designer with that fabulous British accent and the bald head, and he's awesome in so many ways. But the next one won't be a visual designer who is thinking about colors and typography. It's going to be somebody who's thinking about words and language and the impact and tone and pacing. It's going to be someone who writes really, really well. There's going to be jobs and opportunities for English majors and liberal artists everywhere. A great example of this is Quartz. So Quartz is an online news site, and they launched a news app that's completely conversational, but automated. So the way it works is their editors have designed their stories to be micro-content, and that micro-content is interacted with in a conversational way. You have to try it out if you've got an iPhone. It's really interesting. But probably what makes it stick isn't the fact that that experience is way better, because it does feel a bit gimmicky. It's the fact that the copy and the conversation is so sharp, witty, and good, and that's why you'll keep it on your phone. So a really interesting set of experimentation that's happening there. But probably what gets me the most excited, especially when I talk to groups of startup people or groups of businesses that are just trying to figure this out. Shopify did some really, really awesome stuff in this area, is that if you're running a hackathon or you're trying to test a business idea, conversational interfaces are probably the easiest way to get to a minimum viable product that you can actually learn from. It's because if you were to adopt a platform like Smooch, for example, it's 3 steps. You choose which channels you want to have access to. Maybe you want to enable a number for SMS. Maybe you want to have a website, a simple web page with some chat. Maybe you just want to be on Facebook. You go into Smooch, you connect these channels that you've picked over to Slack, which you probably already have. If not, it's free. And then you just start messaging. Give out that phone number to people. Give out the Facebook handle or Facebook page to people, or get some Facebook ads to it. And suddenly you're going to be able to learn from everybody who's interacting with your service, even though you're human powering it. You're going to be able to transact and actually sell a product to them and collect money. And all of these learnings you can take afterwards and build a set of stories that you can give to a developer and actually productize, still keeping the conversational element intact. So it's a really, really interesting way for anybody to start messaging without NLP, without AI, without call centers full of people. You can really prototype a business in an afternoon in an interesting way. So obviously we're pretty excited about this stuff at Smooch. In addition to just getting all of this popularized, I also run a newsletter called Messaging Weekly. It's up to almost 1,000 subscribers now. So if you're interested in messaging and conversational commerce, every week I take the best news and the best new apps and services in this topic and send it out to the mailing list. So a really interesting way to stay informed. And check us out, smooch.io. Thanks, guys. Questions? Yeah.
Saw in your last example there, it's multiple users to one client. How about, in our case, it's multiple users to multiple clients? That's from Slide?
Right. So we don't do the. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So the gentleman's question was, in our use case diagram, it's many consumers into one business, right? So the way that we've built Smooch is that we really look at the business to consumer use case. We're not thinking about the marketplace use case right now. Not that it's a very interesting one, it's a very prevalent one, but when we think of the business to consumer use case, we think of multiple destinations within a business for a message. So for example, let's say you are dealing with an e-commerce company. Your message might be directed to the sales desk, or it might be directed to the fulfillment desk. And both can be using different business systems. One might use Salesforce, the other might use SAP for whatever ERP planning. And that's the kind of interaction that we support. We don't yet support a marketplace where you have multiple sellers that need to connect to multiple buyers. Yeah. That's something we're thinking of. Mm-hmm. In terms of the experience when dealing with a communication over messaging, I think that's going to be one of the big challenges for brands. So one is, oh, sorry, I have to repeat the question. I'm used to that. So Richard asked is, what do I think of the possibility of the experience on messaging not being consistent? So if you're dealing with human agents especially, you're going to have a variety of different tones and attitudes and ways of handling and addressing a situation. I think that is something that can be solved with a certain amount of training, and does definitely take a brand decision to define what is a tone we want, what's the kind of language we want, what's okay, what's not okay, how helpful we're going to be. That's on the human side. I think the human side is going to be gradually reduced out of this whole equation. If we could see what the major players are doing, humans are the stopgap measure until they train their bots to be good enough, or they're the escalation path when the bot isn't able to answer a question. But then that same design issue comes up with the bot. How do you design your bot so that it has a personality that you might not want to feel human, but that communicates in the way that your brand should be communicating? A very tricky question, and that's why I think the next designers are going to be writers. Yeah.
How do you show ROI to clients since it's such a new way of interacting with consumers? How do you show that this is going to lead to them getting more consumers, more purchases?
Right. So right now we don't make any claims. So the question was, how do we show ROI to consumers? Right now we don't have enough data to show ROI in a consistent way. The companies that we've seen adopt it so far have done it because they believe in it and they believe in the vision, and there's this intuitive knowledge. Now we do have some stats that show lift for individual clients, but we don't have enough to generalize it across an industry. That's basically the idea there. It's so new and so hot off the presses, it's becoming like a vision thing at this point in the sales process and a customer experience thing more than an ROI thing. Yeah. But it will get there. Yeah.
So it seems pretty good that you're building this sort of piping behind for the communication. But part of your presentation is also about the bots, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a big part of the story. Do you have anyone that's working on the AI part?
Yeah.
Because the AI has been talking for the last 20 years. Why now and not 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Right. That's a great question. So the question was, bots have a big place in the future of messaging. And do we have anybody at Smooch who is working on bots and working on AI? And do we have anybody at, why is it happening now? There's a couple of elements to that question. I'll answer them. So firstly, at Smooch, we're not doing any AI or any NLP. We made this as a strategic decision because delivering all these messages, keeping them synchronized and consistent is a massive technical challenge already at the scale that we're doing it at, and is going to continue to grow. However, we are partnered with right now about a dozen companies that are doing AI and NLP in a variety of different ways. Some local to Montreal that have come out of UDM and that are really thinking about this problem for the machine learning group. Others in SF, that's one of the reasons why we have an SF project there. Others in Germany. It turns out that the API that we've built, because it's taking conversations from so many different mediums and connecting to so many different types of businesses, ends up being a wealth of really, really valuable machine learning data, and that's the stage that we're at now. So the bots that we're seeing built, other than on platforms like Wit.ai and API.ai that are consumer trained, they tend to be really, really specialized undertakings, and often the earliest ones that are shipped aren't the ones that are based on NLP because those have a lot of failure cases, but they're ones that are entirely scripted. But I think that we're about to enter this, I guess, golden age of machine learning and NLP, just if we look at what happened with the Go match and how that's going. And I think there's some interesting things that are going to come out of this. I can't talk about everything because I'm thinking about all the companies I'm under mutual NDA with, but exciting stuff.
So I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Who owns the rights to the data that is exchanged?
Yeah.
Do you do anything you want with it?
So in our terms of so the question was who owns the data that's exchanged over Smooch. So in our terms of service, the customer, the business rather, owns the data for their users and their customers. We store it, we encrypt it in transit, we encrypt it at rest, we follow really, really stringent security protocols there. But what we allow to happen is a business can opt in to authorize any third party to either siphon these messages as they're coming in and learn from them, or do an export whenever they need. So the way it works when we work with an AI company, for example, is we partner with them and we say, ask our customers, propose here are the customers that are in the space and in the vertical that you want to work with. Ask them, pitch them if they want to share, if they're interested in working with this technology, they will open their data to you. And that's the way we do it. We explicitly don't just share conversations and customer data. And most cases, we don't even have the capability to look into them easily and see what's being said. Yeah.
What do you think are the big opportunities in terms of was it more for marketplaces or more like for developing sort of personalities on the go, like sort of you have a bot for restaurants, bot for movies, bot for travel?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think are the biggest opportunities?
Okay, so the question was, what do I think are the biggest opportunities in messaging right now? I mean, selfishly, I can say that I think that this fundamental infrastructure and plumbing is still, apart from Smooch, rather unsolved. So that's a serious opportunity. I do think that in the bot space, there won't be one generic bot that's going to rule them all. I think they're going to be entirely vertical specific and even task specific. A great example of this is looking at, there's these schedulers called X.ai and Clara.ai that exist over email. They're kind of like virtual assistants that you copy on your email to schedule a meeting. So they'll look at your calendar, they'll ask the person on the other end of the email what works, and they make you feel like you've got a secretary that's scheduling your meetings for you. I think that's one class of bot. And there's a lot of common business processes that we've been automating through software and through weird workflows, and I think that's going to be a big, big opportunity for bots to take on. And then I think just for every commerce to think about how it can achieve a higher degree of personalization and even a higher degree of distribution by just adopting messaging and adopting conversation is going to be huge.
And just a follow-up on that, like, so to say Facebook or like Apple, they launch like those like messaging or like Gozzo on the messaging app, there's like the whole level of like disconnection, if you will, like between the brands that have like real estate on the phone that are all now coexisting in the same platform.
Yep.
Let's say I would have a request for booking a hotel, and which bot is going to answer? Is it Hotel Tonight? Is it Airbnb? It's like, how does all brands are going to coexist and compete in this conversation?
Right. Yeah. So Richard had a great question, which is, as we disintermediate, let's say, the app from the phone, and we end up that all of these phones have basically, all of these, let's say, businesses or bots have equal presence in your contact list. How are we deciding, or how does a message know where it's going to go? And there's all sorts of layers to this, right? So Facebook is doing something called M, which is their kind of like AI virtual assistant. You could think of it as your shopping bot that's built for you. And one of the goals of M is to do exactly this, is to route your inquiry and your question over to the right bot or the right company to help you. The other way that people are thinking about this is, well, bots are just contacts, and a contact is like an app. So if you're messaging with the Hotel Tonight contact, well, that's who is going to get your deal, right? So you choose which personality to interact with based on your choice as a consumer. And then like last week, I was having dinner with people from WhatsApp, and they were talking about one of the big issues for them in terms of opening up their platform to more businesses, is they're so excited to do it, but they're also so worried about the spam and the what happens when you have all of this consumer interaction that's going on over messaging. How do you quiet down a company that's abusing the channel? How do you make it so that it respects the user's communication channel and their networks don't lose value because they become too spammy or too noisy? So all of these are really big questions, some of them unsolved, and I think there's also competing solutions to them, and we'll see how it's going to work out. Personally, I'm really excited by what Facebook is doing with M. I think it's really, really interesting as a way to mediate it, but it also gives them a lot of power. And if you think that, why is Facebook doing all this messaging? Why are they doing M? It's purely an ad play for them, right? They don't care so much about the fact that the medium is interesting. They care much more about the fact that they're going to get a lot of data from conversations that can be mined and can be used for targeting, and they're going to be able to sell ads and sell referrals to services and bots and contacts through this AI platform that's able to route your request. So that's going to be really, really interesting place to shape up. And like Microsoft's doing with Cortana, and Google's doing with Google Now. Everyone's thinking about this layer of advertising that's going to go over their messaging platform to monetize it. Yeah. Right. So that's a problem that Smooch solves. So the question was, what about cross-platform? So how do you handle a user as they move from one channel to another? Because the messaging landscape, we firmly believe is going to, and a lot of people in the industry firmly believe, is going to be fragmented for a bunch of really good reasons. So Smooch does a lot of this. Part of the routing and the logistics layer we've built in is making it really, really easy for a conversation that starts on plain SMS to be authenticated and move in-app, or a conversation that starts in Facebook to move onto a direct web chat. And that's interesting for a lot of brands, and the reason why we built it is because oftentimes it's easier to start a conversation or a relationship with a user on a low-friction channel like Facebook or like SMS, but then for higher conversion or a better experience, or when you as a business really want to own it, then you'll move it into You'll want to move that whole conversation, that whole history, into a dialogue on your own properties that you control the experience of.
The tone of the conversation, the messaging style, or
So that's up to the business. I mean, we don't. We tend to keep. Our brand promise is really that we're going to offer the richest experience possible on each channel and make sure it degrades gracefully when you go to a channel like SMS that's really basic and doesn't support all the bells and whistles of like a Facebook or a Telegram. So we do a lot in thinking about how do these things degrade, how do we keep it consistent. But tone and language would be up to the business. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
So is there any services that transform? So now, like most of the applications that currently exist, all their information or like their data is structured in like sort of plain old databases.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like and it's like easy value.
Yeah.
Is there any services that like easily transform that into like sort of a bot way? So like I can ask a question and then like it will query the right product for me, the right tool, the right service.
Yeah. So the question was, are there any services that are able to take a user database of key value pairs and transform that into a bot interaction? There's a couple of players that are really, really early in thinking about how to do that. So Outbrain, the company that does like, it's a content marketing company. They do content placement. You might see them on like recommended links of products to read. They're thinking about doing something in the bot space. I played with a really early version of their product a couple of weeks ago, and it's going towards that, but not exactly. There's also a company that just came out of YC this year called ChatFuel that's thinking about solving this problem on Telegram exclusively. They're a Russian company for now. They haven't brought in yet. And they're playing with this, but it's a really, really hard thing to generalize. So we'll see how it goes. If you want to build this yourselves, there's great platforms called Wit.ai that got bought by Facebook and is maybe not as maintained as it used to be. And there's API.ai. Both of these are services that help you like start doing NLP if you're a non-programmer and figure out how to match it to your user database in the right way. But there's no like point and click magical query a database solution yet. It would be awesome if there was. So there's another opportunity. Cool. Yeah.
most of what you showed is also about talking to a business or someone in the business or an expert. And you start looking into, and this is going to sound weird, but I think it's where we're going. Talking to an object, talking to the Internet of Things, talking to your car, and messaging, asking what the weather is outside, how it's doing.
Yeah. Right. So the question was, have you started thinking about talking to objects instead of talking to businesses? So that's when we think talking to objects, we're really talking about talking to software on objects. So one example is a bot. So one of our customers is called Vinly. Vinly is they're a startup out of Houston, I believe, and they make a plugin for that port on your car that's underneath the steering wheel, right? So you plug in a little dongle in there, and it's got a SIM card on it, and this dongle connects your car to the web. Right, so it does lots of things, like tells you, what trips you've taken. If there's a check engine light, it warns you about it. Tells you how you're driving in terms of your gas and fuel consumption. What it's going to do really, really soon is it's going to allow you to text it anything from anywhere whenever you have a question. Where's my car? Right? Or just, if you had a really rough night, you can ask it, where's my car? And it'll get back to you. Or whatever the case is. So they're starting to think about these text-based interactions. We're starting to see some other IoT stuff also adopting it purely from the dev perspective, but they're always going with the perception of a bot that's representing the hardware. So yeah, definitely an area. Like, an example we use in our investor pitch is all around that. In our vision of the future, you have your Maytag appliance that is starting a conversation with the Maytag serviceman and the homeowner, and it's a human readable conversation about what's going on to schedule an appointment. And the service manager can query the device, the end user, the consumer sees everything that's going on, and that's like the vision for conversational commerce. Cool. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.